Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. But first, Jeff.
Yeah?
How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. I actually just got back from a very interesting presentation on the Sega Dreamcast.
Oh, that's pretty exciting. The gentleman who put on that presentation, would you say he was a charming and
tall and devilishly handsome? Very, very learned.
Did he have a really annoying voice?
No. I think he's on he's got a podcast or something.
Oh yeah. We should probably plug that podcast sometime. Thank you for joining us on InterPartyConflict. Yes, I did a presentation at my local library today about the Sega Dreamcast, and I think it went pretty well. I would say it's probably one of the better presentations that I've done.
Yeah, it did a good job, although I was a little late for it. Sorry.
It's all right. It happens to all of us. That just means that, we'll have to... I don't even know where I'm going with this. But thank you for coming anyway.
Yeah.
That was cool.
That was good.
Yeah. I hope it was as enjoyable for you as it was for me. Well, the research actually isn't very enjoyable, but it was enjoyable to actually do it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was I always wondered about the failure of the Sega Dreamcast, because I didn't even realize how advanced it was compared to a lot of the other consoles out at the time.
Pretty darn cool. It had so many things that it just wasn't able to really utilize because those sorts of things weren't really a thing at the time. Like online play was barely a thing, but the Dreamcast could do it.
Oh yeah, Phantasy Star, and I just didn't realize how to what extent it had better hardware and everything.
Yeah.
And the size of the disc and everything, that was interesting.
Right, yeah.
Cool.
All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and get into this episode.
Sure.
Before we get into questions, we are going to take a little trip into a dark and mysterious dungeon.
Oh no. What's in there,
full
Gabe?
of what we call the Dragon's Hoard.
Oh God!
Thank you, Jeff. So for today, we don't have an actual submission. I did have someone point me in the direction, though, of Paizo.com's RPG Superstar contest. It's a little contest that Paizo.com does, I think every year, where they have people, they're trying to find writers for, adventure modules and such. So the first stage of this contest is for all of the entrants to make a custom magic item. And then they judge those. The winners go on. Then they have to make an NPC and then a dungeon and so on and so on. But I was pointed out that you could go to this contest. You can read the previous year's entrants. This is the 9th season. And they... Actually, no, sorry. This is... I don't know what season we're in now, but the 9th season was 2 years ago. And so I guess they're probably in the 11th season. That's a basic arithmetic for you. But... So anyway, it's a big resource where there's lots of custom magic items. Now, in general, I would prefer to be reading, magic items that were submitted specifically by people. But
sure. I
figured it'd be a neat little trip over here to read one or more of these that that did well in the contest.
Yeah, ones that sound pretty neat.
Yeah. So the item that we're going to talk about today is it was submitted by, I believe this is his username, Kazrandir. Mm-hmm. And once again, this is RPG Superstar Season 9. He was in the top 32. And the item he submitted was the Choker of the Queen Bee.
Yep.
It is a blackened iron choker hanging, from which is hanging a detailed bronze figurine of a crowned honeybee. Now, the way this works, when the collar is worn, the bronze bee springs to life and latches itself to the wearer, embedding its stinger deep into her neck.
Ugh.
The wearer's throat fills with swarming bees, doing no harm, but giving her voice an aggressive buzzing quality that grants a competence bonus to intimidate checks made using her voice. Once per day is a standard action. The wearer may consume a small part of the swarming magic, coating her throat in soothing honey. For the next hour, she instead gains a similar competence bonus on diplomacy checks made using her voice, and is treated as if under the effects of the honeyed tongue spell, which is a Pathfinder spell that I think does something involving diplomacy.
Okay.
Finally, The wearer may release the entire swarm as a full round action once per day. The bronze bee burrows into her neck and out of sight as thousands of bees pour forward from the wearer's mouth in a 15-foot cone.
Ugh.
Those caught in the cone take 46 piercing damage. A reflex save halves the damage. The bees then disperse immediately, and using the choker in this way removes all its magical effects till the next day, at which point the bronze bee figurine reappears. So, yeah. This is kind of a skin-crawling item.
A little bit.
Little creepy. I think it's definitely got a strong theme.
Yeah.
That is
absolutely
pretty darn cool.
It's pretty neat. Like it's got plenty of use. It has a combat use, and it has
has two different non-combat uses.
Right. And it's also terrifying.
Yes, it is.
I mean, like, if you're really into bees, or, if you're just into bugs, or, like, I don't know, maybe like a blighter character or something like that. I don't know.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, neat.
I didn't even think of this in the context of, like, a druid.
Yeah, it's just... Ugh.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, my dad had bees. He kept bees in our backyard. He had, like, a big, box beehive thing, like, way out in the back.
Your father was a beekeeper?
Is that a reference to something?
I think it's an Eddie Izzard. Yeah, it's an Eddie Izzard joke. It's like, oh yeah, I keep bees. My father was a beekeeper. His father was a beekeeper. Anyway.
Sorry, I think I just lost some of my nerd cred here. But no, my dad had a bunch of bees. One of my earliest memories was like being in my basement, and he had like this big centrifuge thing that he would put the honeycomb in, and then spin it, and all the honey would come out. This is not at all related to that, but I own a giant jar of honey.
Oh, right.
That I have had for probably 10 years.
Yeah.
My mom passed away last year, but she was a doctor, and she had a lot of patients that either economically challenged, like basically she had a lot of poor patients. She also had a lot of like Amish patients that lived out in the country, and they would occasionally pay her in goods rather than currency. And so, like, one of her dogs that she got came as a payment for delivering somebody's baby or something.
Sure.
But one of the things that somebody gave her was this giant jar of honey. I'm talking this thing probably weighs like 5 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I've seen it. It's big.
And she gave it to me. I don't remember why, but she gave it to me. And, like, I've been lugging this thing around every time I've moved. The jar of honey has gone with me. I've used it a few times. It's darn good honey.
Yeah. Honey doesn't exactly go bad.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, isn't it one of the things that, like, they found honey from, like, the Stone Age, and it's
like,
still
or like ancient
still
Egypt or something like that. Yeah. So like it doesn't go bad. It doesn't spoil as easy as anything else.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what are you going to use honey for?
I mean, sweeten your tea.
I guess I know.
Coffee.
I don't really drink tea or coffee.
Right, but yeah, I don't know. There's some recipes that might call for it.
Yeah,
or you just put it on toast.
I have done that before. A while ago, we were on this kick. My wife and I, we were on this kick where we would make biscuits, and then we put honey on biscuits. It was pretty darn good. Yeah, so anyway, that's just one thing that comes to mind with this spell. Another thing that comes to mind is the game BioShock.
Oh, right, yeah.
In the first BioShock, one of the plasmids had your hand was always in view because, it was a first-person shooter, and you shot stuff out of your hand. So one of the things you could do was you'd equip this plasmid, and then, like, bees would burrow out of your flesh and start crawling around your hand, and then you could press the button to, like, throw a swarm of them at enemies. And it was actually really effective because it did damage and it incapacitated them because they were flailing around with the bees.
That game was really good at that, because you have to, like, inject your arm with stuff. It was just, like, the sound effect, and, like, you just, like, I think there was even, like, a little bit of vibration in the controller when you did it, too, and you're just like, like, you felt it.
Yeah. The demo for that game, I would say, is, like, the best demo for a game I've ever played.
Yeah.
I had no interest in playing that until I played the demo, and I was like, I have to buy this game. This is amazing.
Right, yeah. Like, it's a solid game. Like,
Yeah. But one thing that I just want to point out, I've seen a lot of people say that the bees plasmid in that game is like, oh, that's so unbelievable that you would, like, create living bees. Now, okay, I'm not saying that is something that would happen. But... like, people refer to this as being, like, the least plausible of all of the plasmids. Now, hold on a second. What you are doing is your living flesh is creating a living creature. there are living creatures that create other living creatures. There are not living creatures that pick up objects with telekinesis.
Or shoot lightning. Or
shoot light. Well, and then electric eels, they don't really shoot lightning.
No.
But regardless, I'm not saying that it is plausible that you would inject something into yourself that then makes you create living bees in your arm. But I would say it is far more plausible than telekinesis, which isn't a real thing.
Hey, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people that argue that.
I guess. Anyway, I just think it's odd when people are like, oh my goodness, this thing is so unbelievable. And then you're like, but wait a minute, this other thing is even more unbelievable. Anyway.
It's a video game.
I guess. I get too hung up on cognitive dissonance.
Sure.
Anyway, so I think this is a really neat item.
It's good. I mean, like you said, great theming.
Yeah.
Like, if bugs in general are your thing, that's pretty cool. I mean, like, I don't hate bugs.
I do. I very much hate bugs.
And I mean, like, this doesn't really gross me out. It's just, but I mean, like, it definitely, like,
yeah,
like it doesn't necessarily gross me out, but like, I can feel it. Like, I understand being grossed out by stuff like this. I mean, like, if I saw it if it happened in real life, it would probably freak me out.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
The idea of it is cool.
You said something about Eddie Izzard.
Right.
Didn't he have a bit about a guy covered in bees?
That's from the, Is
that from the same thing?
That's from the same bit.
Maybe, I get my nerd cred back. I think I did see this. I just don't remember
back to you. Hold on.
The reference.
Wait, no. Oh, here it is. There you go.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, that was good. All right. Do you want to get into some questions?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so that has been this week's edition of the Dragon's Horde.
Bye, dragon.
Now, Jeff, if somebody wanted to submit a question to us, where would they do so?
I don't know. Perhaps they could go to Reddit at r/InterPartyConflict.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. They could also email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com.
There you go. You can also find us on Twitter at InPartyConflict.
Right. And these are all one word?
Yes. Yeah, no spaces, no hyphens, no underscores.
Right. This first question comes from Isaac Priestley. He's a member on Reddit. How do you deal with travel?
So there's a lot of different ways to deal with travel. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, when the players have to get from point A to point B, even if point A to point B is a very large distance, I tend to just kind of say, okay, it's 3 days later, you guys are there.
Yeah.
There's other ways to do it, and I'll get into those, but like, I personally just, when I'm running an adventure, I would rather just skip the boring stuff, get to the interesting stuff.
Yeah, you're trying to streamline it because, I mean, a lot of the game takes a lot of time anyway. Try to keep the sitting around to a minimum. And, I mean, that doesn't mean that they can't add something to it. But, I mean, in general, yeah, I think just kind of going like, okay, well, you travel this much, maybe deduct this much rations from your inventory or something like that. Even if you do something like that.
Right.
Even if you keep track of something like that. But, I mean, like, if you want to do random encounters and things like that, you can, but for the most part, I feel like skipping over travel can save you a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people roll for random encounters and such, and I think that's great. But like, again, when I'm personally running a game, I want the players to get to the adventure because I want to get through that adventure, and then I want to get to the adventure after that. So for all I know, that random encounter might take up the entire session.
Right.
And like, I mean, that's not inherently a bad thing. If that's what your game is all about, if you're, that's all the power to you. That's cool. But like, again, personally, with my own sensibilities, I don't even want to waste time with all of that. I mean, I personally would view it as a waste. So I just skip through it.
Yeah. There is something to be said about like the setting, like kind of,
That's true.
Like, you want the world to feel real, so you want to throw in those random encounters because you want your players to feel like they're part of a living, breathing world.
Right.
But that can also be done by pre-making a an encounter. Like you could,
That's true.
could be a scripted encounter made to look like a random encounter, but you add something in there that could be a hook for the next adventure or something like that.
When I ran that 5th edition campaign about a year and a half ago that I believe you were in, we at the very beginning I did have a couple random encounters. I think they were random, but I did use them as a way to, like you said, make it seem like the world is real. I was trying to establish that there was this group of bandits that were attacking people on this specific road. So I did have the players get attacked by those bandits on that specific road.
So yeah, I think just trying to keep travel to a minimum, I guess.
Yeah.
Or at least sort of a weird way of saying it, but I mean, like the players are obviously traveling, but
right.
So yeah, keeping the focus less on the travel and more on the adventure is a good idea.
Yeah,
you can definitely use it to your advantage, or use it to kind of like keep the players invested in the world that they're in. Yeah,
and I mean, like if your group is very big on role playing and like the characters, the player characters talking amongst themselves, heck, if there's a way you can facilitate that, go for it.
Yeah, and if
you can get your players to like make do with the travel, like do something with it, then yeah.
Right. Or I mean, if the players want to stop for camp specifically and do a thing, or like, oh, I want my character to go off hunting or something like that. Like, sure. I mean, obviously, yeah, let them do that because that's what the players want to do. But I mean, I don't know. Okay, I feel like combat takes so long, and role playing can take a while too, and like so many things can get off track, and somebody's phone rang, or like, oh, I'm hungry, let's go get hot cheeseburgers or something like that. So like, I feel like if you're gonna cut something short, it might as well be like the traveling.
It might as well be like the random encounter that you didn't even plan on. Yeah.
I mean, and again, unless that's something people just want to do, that's totally fine. Like, obviously, like, there's really no wrong way to do it. It's just all that what you feel like is working best.
Yeah. I would say if you read any fantasy fiction, even just most fiction in general, but like fantasy fiction specifically, try to see how your favorite fantasy books deal with travel. Like I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I'm reading this book series, and they kind of do it the same way I do. Like most of the time it's just like, okay, this much time passes and then they're at their destination. Every now and then they'll make like a little comment about, oh, and by the way, there were these orcs that they had to kill on the way. I think that's a good way to have some sort of something to fill in the fact that, stuff would have happened during those days. But, just try to take something that you're familiar with, like a fantasy series, as an example.
Yeah. One thing comes to mind is Game of Thrones. At least the thing that comes to mind is the difference between the show and the books. Now, there won't be any spoilers. Plus, I haven't read all the books. I've just listened to some of the audiobooks
I've listened to the first book.
Yeah, and I've seen so far all of the show. Traveling in the books, he goes into pretty descriptive detail of all like the traveling and stuff like that and the hardships that go with it. Yeah. And in a lot of cases, not in all the cases, but and in the show, it's almost like people can teleport. They're just like people just show up here and there, and it's just well, because they're skipping over a bit, because obviously that's the boring part. And when you're when you're trying to sell a show, like people don't want to watch people travel; they just want to get to the good part. Right. So like, there's a few points where it's just like, oh, you're here. When did you get here? Doesn't it take like months to go from here to here? But people who haven't read the books and are only seeing the show, they don't really know or care that those two places are 4 months travel between each other. They just care that those characters are interacting. Yeah. So like, so is it important to you and your players that that this world is described as so many miles apart, or is it more important to you and your players that characters interact and drama ensues?
Yeah. So I guess I prefer just to get on with the adventure and just kind of gloss over travel.
Sure.
But yeah, any way you want to do it is cool.
Yeah. All right. This next question comes from Laughing Jackal. Jackal? Is it Jackal? It's Jackal, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Laughing Jackal 641. This is on Reddit. Is it okay to permanently maim a player character on a critical fumble? Now, this brings up critical fumbles, which is its own craziness.
Yeah. So, all right. So, the game itself has the critical hit rule, where when you're making an attack, if you roll a natural 20, depending on the edition, generally that means you either got a critical hit or you might get a critical hit. Mm-hmm. And then a critical hit does double damage, or in 4th edition, max damage, and so on and so on. a lot of people extend the critical hit rules to other things. A lot of people allow critical rolls on like skill checks, which is, explicitly not part of the core rules in D&D. But, a lot of people like to implement critical fumbles, which is if you roll a natural 1, then something bad happens, or maybe you have to roll again and then something bad happens. I personally don't really like critical hits. I mean, like critical hits, they're part of the base rules. I'm fine with that. But anytime people make a change to the way that they do critical hits, like for example, many people use like a critical hit deck where you buy a deck of cards. Whenever a player gets a critical hit, you draw one of the cards and then it says what happens. Yeah. So like you might draw and they get a critical hit and, you just killed the monster instantly. Or like, you cut off its main attack, so it can't use its main attack anymore, and so on. And then there's also critical fumble decks where you rolled a natural 1. Your weapon breaks. Or maybe it's something worse like, you attack yourself instead, and so on.
Yeah.
I don't like those, and here's why. Any kind of critical rule, even just standard critical hits, inherently favors the enemy. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say you implement a rule where on a natural 1, you kill yourself. Let's just make it as far in one direction as possible. You roll a natural 1, it means that you die. If an enemy rolls a natural 1, they die.
Sure.
Oh no, they were going to die anyway.
Right.
When a player rolls a natural 1, you might have to change the entire arc of the campaign because maybe the most important character in the group just died and now you don't have an heir to the throne anymore, and so on and so on. Let's make it a little bit less severe. Let's say on a natural 20, you cut off the enemy's arm. They're still alive, but they can't use their main attack. Okay, a player uses it on an enemy. I cut off that enemy's arm. He can't attack anymore. The end result is he's going to die because we're going to kill him.
Right.
Okay, he was going to die anyway. But then if an enemy rolls a natural 20 on a player, you've just cut off the fighter's arm. Right. Now that fighter has to completely change his character. I mean, maybe not to super extent. I'm sure there's a way you can, learn to use his other arm or get a robotic arm or whatever. But if a bad thing happens to an enemy, no one cares.
Right.
Because it was going to happen anyway.
The stakes are a lot lower.
So much lower. But any kind of significant damage to a player is going to have so many more ramifications. Now, I guess some people want that. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But you have to acknowledge that it is not as fair on the players as it is on the bad guys. I mean, maybe you're not concerned about how fair it is, but like that's how it is. So I don't like when any kind of new rule regarding critical hits or critical fumbles is implemented because, like I said, it is going to negatively impact the players. Somewhere down the line, it's going to negatively impact them in a way that people are not going to be happy about.
Yeah. Even and there are plenty of like classes and feats and things like that do kind of like play into criticals. That makes you like, you're better at critical hitting with a certain weapon and things like that. So you can, with the use of like feats and things like that, like you can make it more favorable for the player. But yeah, you're right. It's still much higher stakes for the player than the enemy, because it's like, the DM can just make they can just make more.
Yeah. It's always cool when a player is like, oh man, I got a natural 20 and I killed the bad guy in one hit. Okay, that's cool. But just keep in mind, next battle, you're going to be facing like 20 goblins. There's 20 of them. 4 of you, they have 5 times as much of a chance of killing you in one hit.
Right.
Do you want that rule as the player? Yeah, it's cool when you're killing the bad guy, but it will eventually come back to bite you. And so I just think a lot of people don't realize that. They think, oh man, it's fair on both sides because, if the players can do it, the bad guys can do it. But no, it doesn't matter when something bad happens to the bad guys because they were going to die anyway.
Yeah. Because, 1 versus 1, it's technically balanced. But when you think about, like everything that's involved, like, that person worked hard on that character and now it's dead in one hit. It's sort of just like, oh, well, now I got to make another character. And that's not That stops everything.
It's never fun for a player to have to make a new character.
Yeah.
I mean,
in most cases, I guess.
Yeah. When they don't want to.
Right.
It's never fun for a player to have to make a new character.
Yeah, in most cases, people are invested in their character in some way or another, and having to lose that character can just it can put a sour taste in their mouth. So
right. And to be clear, this listener, when he submitted this question, he actually gave like a little bit of a story. He said, "So my last session, I DM'd my barbarian player who threw an axe at a gnoll that was biting the druid's arm. The issue is they rolled a 1, so they cut off the druid's arm instead because I felt they would be close to hitting the gnoll. Do you think this was appropriate?" Like, that's the way he worded his question. Then he said the player was okay with it. He now has a pet arm.
Which I'm not sure exactly what that means.
I'm not sure what that means either, but...
Like, it was like an animate spell or something like that, maybe? Awaken? Was it the, like, druid awaken spell where you awaken a tree, but instead of its arm?
That's kind of terrifying.
I like it, but anyway.
The important thing is that the player was okay with it and that something good came of it. But like I said, I generally don't like any sort of like, oh, you cut off whatever because you rolled a whatever. Like I don't like that because it can go bad so much easier than it can go good.
Plus mechanically it can be complicated. I know there's probably rules for things like that. Like you take -8 on things or you can't use a two-handed weapon, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, depending on the edition, there may not be. I think in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, I believe there is like a little chart on, if your player loses his eye, it can do this. And these are all like variant rules. It's in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Mm-hmm. But there are suggestions on how to handle like loss of limb and so on, which I think is a good move. Because like 3rd edition, no, there were no rules on what it meant to have to be missing an arm, except for the fact that one I think it was Defenders of the Faith had like, here's a magically robotic arm that you can get.
Huh. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think just like the mechanics of like taking one's limb and things like that are complicated too. How do you you're doing like, I'm swinging a sword at somebody, like of course somebody's gonna lose a limb, but like that's not built into the attack damage system, you know?
Yeah, D&D is intentionally very abstract. Mm-hmm. They don't really put in things that are that granular. I guess it's just like you just attack, whatever that means. You attack and you do this much damage, whatever that means.
Yeah. It's why I'm like, like in the newer Fallout games, like, the enemies don't lose their limbs until they're dead, because then it would just be weird and like hard to. I think the ghouls maybe, but
have you ever played Dead Space?
No, I haven't.
I played the first one. I thought it was really neat because the entire combat mechanic system is based around the fact that you are going to be cutting enemies' limbs off. Like, I think you can kill enemies by just like hitting them in their torso a bunch of times, but if you shoot an enemy in the limb, it'll cut off that limb. If you cut off 2 limbs, they die.
Okay.
So like you're trying to cut off limbs, and they make it pretty easy to do so. So anyway, I just thought it was really neat because I hadn't really seen that in a game before.
Yeah, I've definitely heard good things. I mean, but they made 3 games, I'm pretty sure, and they all sold really well. So, all right. Another question from a Laughing Jackal. Jackal? It's Jackal. I just read
Butt scratcher.
Butt scratcher.
Sorry, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Laughing Jackal 641 from Reddit. He asks, how do you handle player character death in your games?
So similar to dealing with travel, there's a lot of different ways to do this. Mm-hmm. Probably the purest way of dealing with death is when your character dies, you make a new character.
Right.
And even then, some people say, okay, you come in at level 1.
Oh, wow. You didn't even think of that.
There are people that do it. They say you come in level 1 and then you like shine everybody else's shoes until you've been around long enough to be level 2 or 3. Maybe at that point, all of their characters have died and now you're a low level party again.
Oh my goodness.
Some people feel that way. I personally think player character death shouldn't get in the way of that person being able to enjoy the game.
Sure.
So, like, some people would even say, you can just make a new character, but be like 1 or 2 levels below. I even still don't like that. Maybe some people would feel that it's not fair or something, but I mean, like, whose fault is it that person died? Did they die on purpose or something? Like,
right, yeah.
If they've been putting in all the time with that character and then that character dies, then like, just let them make a new character so they can keep playing the game.
Right, yeah.
Player character death is bad enough because people get invested in their characters. And so when that character dies, that's a big deal. You shouldn't rub salt into the wound by saying, oh, not only do you have to on the spot make a new character, but you can't even be as powerful as you were before.
Right. Yeah, you lose all of your powers. I mean, because you lose that character, but yeah, now you've lost all of your usefulness in the party.
Right. Now, there is, of course, the opposite end of this spectrum. In many of the campaigns I've played in, and a lot of them that I've run, mainly because of the groups that I've played in before that, a lot of the time the DM will give each player one free true resurrection. In some of the groups I played in, it was something that just automatically happened. If that character dies, next round, they're back at full, they have all their spells, they're standing up, and they're ready to go.
Yeah.
There was even a time where one of the player characters intentionally killed himself because he knew he was gonna. Well, I don't think
maybe it was that it had happened to a couple other characters.
That's what it was. That's what it was. It was the three of us. It was me, Jay, and Chris.
Okay.
Chris, I've talked about him a lot on this podcast. He's a great player, great DM. He always has a trick up his sleeve.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
The three of us, we were playing through this campaign with a DM. Her name was Melissa. She was a killer DM. I mean that in a good and bad way. She was a good DM, but she would very often kill the party. All three of us, we went into this very, very deadly dungeon that Jeff might recognize. Oh. It was called the Black Egg.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to we'll talk about the Black Egg some other time. But anyway, Jay's character died at one point and came back to life.
Sure.
My character died and came back to life. And Chris, he was at like 1 hit point or something. And we were in this room. The floor was poison, literally. There was an invisible red dragon and a bunch of half-dragon minions of his.
I remember that.
Yes. And it was his turn. He was like, okay, I ripped my throat out. And then, sure enough, he came back next round and kicked some butts. We won, and it was awesome. But, and sorry, just one little aside here. It was a running gag that Melissa was never able to kill Chris's character. That was like the one time she came close, and he killed himself rather than let her kill him. But anyway, so some groups give the players a free true resurrection, which, I think that's kind of cool depending on the campaign. I don't always do it, but I have done it before.
I feel like it definitely fits in a campaign where you have like lower number of players than the adventure usually calls for.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's technically like having another character because your character comes back.
Right. I guess, yeah.
In a way.
And it's very gamey, I will admit that, but I mean, you're playing a game. Being gamey isn't inherently a problem.
It's just a lot of DMs take pride in killing their players.
Yeah. I just gave a dismissive hand gesture for everybody out there.
And like, I guess if you go into it and let your players expect it, like basically if you tell your players, hey, bring a couple extra characters just in case.
Yeah.
Like if they know it can happen and you're not gonna take it too seriously. Like, if you don't take player death seriously, you should let that be known to your players so that they can at least prepare themselves for it.
Right. And I have played with people that, like, one guy showed up to the game with a stack of character sheets in case one of them died.
Right.
Because especially like back in 1st and 2nd edition days, that's what people would do because it was so easy to die in those editions. And especially even in the later editions at lower levels.
Yeah.
Not counting 4th edition because everybody's a tank in 4th edition. But like in 3rd and 5th edition, at first level, you'll die in 1 hit. Or at least you'll go to 0 in 1 hit. So, there's different ways to do that. I do not like killing PCs.
Yeah.
I am guilty of sometimes altering enemies' tactics specifically because I don't want to kill a player. Like if a player's low on hit points, I might, conveniently have that goblin or whatever not attack that character and attack somebody else. I'm not proud of that. And I really hope that in those cases, the players don't catch wind of it. Because there have been times where, like, I can tell that my DM is going easy on us because we're, like, about to die. And it does take some of the fun out of it for me. That being said, if my character died, that would, in most cases, take a lot of the fun out of it as well. That's not 100% true. Like, there was a time one of my characters, I had a character that I really, really, really liked. And he died. And it was the best thing that ever happened to that character. Because I had made a realistic character, like a medieval realistic character. So a character whose goals were to become a noble and have a family and retire. Those were his goals. And then he got caught up in this plot with this evil necromancer. And then he got killed. As the bad guy was escaping, he shot one final blast back, hit my character, did exactly enough damage to drop him however far below 0 he needed to go. So like just barely killed my character. Shortly after that, the players found a way to bring myself and one of the other dead player characters back to life. And that got me thinking, how would my character react to have being dead?
Right.
And then like, I was like, well, wait a minute. What if something went wrong in the process? Because he was killed by a necromancer.
Sure.
And then brought back to life. And the way they brought him back to life was by using some of the necromancer's own magic. So that got me thinking, like, what's a way that I can use this to make a more interesting character?
Yeah.
And I won't really get too far into it. I'll probably talk about it some other time. But like, what I came up with is, I would say, one of my top 2 favorite character concepts I've ever made in my entire life. And I will continue to use this character somewhere in the background of my campaign settings forever.
Is it Ichi?
No, it's not Ichi. No, Ichi died so many times. So many times, but we had a high-level cleric in the party with very, very powerful connections, and we all had a free true res in that campaign. So, like, he died many times and was brought back many times. I also use him in the background of my campaigns too, but this other character, I'll get into it some other time.
Was it one of the chronic S block ones?
Oh no, it's talking about I had a cleric once named Saythorn. And I took the leadership feat and got a fighter companion named Saris.
So it'd be, Saris and Saythorn.
Nobody but myself could ever remember which one was which. So
I've already forgotten, and
they just referred to me as Chronic S Block. Those were my 2 characters. No, this character's name was Artemis Redsleeves.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, like, I was writing a fantasy novel at one point. I actually finished the first book of it, and it was that character. It was that character's party. It was like their journey. It was the first third of their journey from the first book actually ended around the time that he died, and then go from there. So
death is important, obviously, because you have to have there has to be some risk involved. Yes. Otherwise, it just gets kind of boring.
The game just isn't fun if there is no consequence for failure.
Right.
But failure is not fun. No, I mean, very rarely is failure fun.
Right.
I would say, because especially when I was a newer DM, I would get hung up a lot on I wouldn't want to kill my player characters. So, like, especially early on, I would fudge a lot of stuff to keep people alive. But then, if I ever didn't fudge anything, and if somebody did die, I would feel directly responsible because, like, I could have prevented that and I didn't. So you don't want to get caught in that.
All right.
Don't go out of your way to stop death from happening. Just make sure that if death does happen, that you give the player whatever opportunities to make something interesting out of it as possible.
Yeah. Because I know, like, in the rules, like, things like, I think Raise Dead, don't you, like, lose a level or something like that?
In 3rd edition, you did. If I'm not mistaken, in 5th edition, you take, like, a penalty that doesn't go away for a really long time.
Oh, it's like a red sickness sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's not as permanent. And I mean, some people have issues with that. I can totally understand someone not liking how temporary death is. I agree that death should be a big deal, which is why, like I said, I had a character that was permanently altered personality-wise because of his death.
Sure.
And so I can understand both sides of that argument, but I try to err on the side of what's fun. And to me, it is more fun when you are able to come back from being dead without too much of a penalty. Yeah. It shouldn't just be you just pop back up. If you do, that's a campaign specific thing. But there's definitely different ways to do it.
Yeah.
So, like, if the dice say that someone's going to die, just let them die.
Yeah.
But like I said, try to be as accommodating to that player as possible so that they don't get less enjoyment out of the game because of it.
Right. Yeah. And you never want a player to leave your party if it doesn't have to happen. Yeah. So it's like, like if somebody loses their character and then just doesn't want to play anymore, that's sad. That's one less player too. And like, so now Now the party's going to suffer from it, and you either have to like add in a DM control character, which we've talked about isn't exactly the greatest thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, so it's tricky. And like I said, a lot of DMs like take pride in killing their players, which, I mean, like in some campaigns, or if you're just running an adventure or something, like I remember we did the Tomb of Horrors, and like, with the idea of like, your characters are gonna die, so like go ahead and like, you know, make a couple extra ones, or like they come back.
What we did?
What was it?
So the Tomb of Horrors, for anybody who doesn't know, is a notoriously deadly adventure. It was created by Gary Gygax because back in the early days of first edition D&D, there were players who somehow got the idea in their head: there is not an adventure that I cannot get through alive. I don't know where this attitude would come from, because that's not what the game is to me. But anyway.
Wow.
So Gary Gygax said, "Oh, is that so? Okay. Yeah, give me a minute." He scrawled drew some skulls and crossbones on a piece of paper and he said, "Okay, here you go. This is the Tomb of Horrors." So the Tomb of Horrors is a very, very deadly adventure. That being said, it was deadly in earlier editions.
Sure.
All attempts to revamp it in later editions, it's just boring, because it's very, very hard to die in later editions. Like, it is so much harder to die than it was before. So a lot of the stuff that was, oh, you touched that thing with your skin, you're dead. Now it's like, okay, roll a reflex save. Okay, now roll a fortitude save. Okay, you take this many damage. The next time you roll a fortitude save, you take this more damage, and so on. And it's far less deadly just in general. The game is far less deadly than it used to be. So I thought, you know, I want to find a way to run the Tomb of Horrors and have it be deadly, but also have it be fun. So the way that we did this, was it just you and Steve?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I think it was just the two of us.
So we decided to make D&D more like a game and less like a role-playing game. So what we did was I purposely had you guys make characters that were way under-leveled. I think the 3rd edition Tomb of Horrors was, quote-unquote, designed for like a group of 10th level characters or something. Sure. I was like, no. You guys are making them make 3rd level characters.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I had you make 3rd level characters. There was no pretense of role playing. It was just, okay, your characters show up, you go in, once they die, all right, you guys are standing at the entrance again. You guys were allowed to use all of your out of game knowledge. Mm-hmm. If you ever wanted to, you could remake your characters. Yeah. So like, if you were like, oh, well, we couldn't get through that door because we didn't have a rogue. All right, I'm just going to make a rogue this time, a level 3 rogue. Go for it.
Yeah.
And then it was like a puzzle. So each time you were like, what can we do a little bit differently?
Yeah.
So that we can get a little bit further than last time. And then there were a few things that I ended up having to, few little changes I had to change because it didn't quite work otherwise. One of which was there are a few monsters in the Tomb of Horrors, not many. There's like 3 or something. I made it so that damage persists. So if you dealt 10 damage to the monster, that 10 damage would still be there next time, even though the entire rest of the dungeon would have reset.
Yeah.
So that way, otherwise you guys literally would not have been able to kill some of those monsters because you were a group of 3rd level. You were 2 3rd level characters.
And it wasn't it like if we died, it actually came back with like a higher level or something too, like that.
Not at first, but you guys got to...
when we get like hit milestones.
This is a small spoiler for the Tomb of Horrors. You guys got to the false lich.
Oh.
And you killed him.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then you guys left thinking, oh, you were done. And then, no, you were not. I had you guys then, you now could be like 5th level instead of 3rd level.
Sure.
So you hit a milestone and then I let you from that point on be a higher level, which almost makes it feel like a roguelike now that now that I know what a roguelike is as opposed to 10 years ago. I mean, not in the randomized sense, but there, you die, you can start over and then use what you learned last time to be a little bit better this time.
Yeah. I do remember making I think it was like a gnome or halfling, whichever one has the like better saves or something like that. Like I think like
probably halfling.
I think a halfling gets like a +1 all
or something.
Yeah. +1 all saves. I think it was a halfling monk paladin with like a really high charisma, so you can get like the charisma bonus to saves.
Yeah.
I was just trying to make him as like high saves as possible, but then he was also a small sized monk, so he had like a 1d4 -1 to
Right.
like attack, unarmed attack, and it was just like, oh my, like, so you can get through all the traps and stuff just fine, but once it came to actually fighting the lich or whatever, it was like, oh,
yeah,
I can't actually do any damage to this thing, but I can jump over that trap really well.
Yeah, and that reminds me of why I even wanted to do this in the first place. So when they first came out with a 3rd edition version of the Tomb of Horrors, this was even further back. This was maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago or something. I told, I don't remember if you were part of it, but I told Jay, I told our other friend Jeff, not you, but a different Jeff, and a couple other people. I was like, hey man, there's this Tomb of Horrors. It's supposed to be super deadly. Let's go through this. Let's make some 3rd level characters. And then everybody made dwarven rogues.
Wait, I think, was I there for that?
You might have been. I don't know. This, I mean,
I think
we were in a group at the time, but like this was just, it was.
I think it was that.
When I lived on Detroit Street.
Yeah, I think it might have been there.
Maybe.
Yeah, but yeah, we all made dwarves.
And I mean,
I do remember that.
I understand that you guys were going in with the most effective characters possible, but this legendarily difficult dungeon was, okay, I make a search check. All right, you found a trap. I rolled a disarm. All right, you disarm the trap. Okay, I have to make a save. All right, I made the save. Okay. When does it become deadly? Like, it's just, again, it's a fundamental difference between 1st edition and 3rd edition.
Yeah.
The game is not the same game, so the same challenges are not going to be as deadly.
Right.
Because the game as a whole is not as deadly. So it's not a fault to the dungeon. Well, I mean, the dungeon itself is very bland.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't meant to be interesting. It was meant to be deadly within the framework of 1st edition.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah.
So what were we talking about?
Death?
Character death. So deal with death however you want. Just make a decision at the beginning of the campaign. Make sure your players are on board.
Right.
And let the dice fall where they may. I actually stopped using a DM screen. I think DM screens are really cool because it's great to have all of like the information at the palm of your hand.
Sure, yeah.
At your fingertips or whatever idiom I'm trying to use. It's great to have that right within view. It's also cool to have a way that you can like hide your notes. But if I'm the only one that sees the result of a roll, I am naturally going to have to fight the urge to make it more fun of a result than what actually lands on the die. So without a DM screen, just roll whatever happens, and whatever happens, happens.
Plus, like, as a player, when there's a DM screen, it's like, well, like, there's always that, like, did he fudge that roll? Like, you know, it's like, I wanted to hit that thing, or, you know, or like do that thing. Was that really the DC? That sort of thing. It's
right.
It's like, or is he just trying to make it so I can't do this thing? Like, you know,
yeah.
When there's the more transparency, the less cheated the player can feel, I guess.
Right. And to an extent, you are literally putting a barrier between you and the players.
Right.
And when I started playing with a group that like they didn't use a DM screen, they just rolled right out in the open, I felt so much more like it was just me and the DM face to face.
Sure.
And I really like that. So this isn't about DM screens, but they kind of go hand in hand. So I say if character death happens, it happens, but it's not fun. So if you're going to make a change, make sure everybody is okay with that change and then change it.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, like you said, it can be fun. Just
it can.
You can make it fun.
Yeah.
But you have to have the option there for, you know, the player to come back from it in one way or another.
If that character hadn't been able to come back from the dead, I mean, I was upset, but because we didn't find out until I think the next session that, my character can come back from the dead. So like there was a period where I was really bummed because I really liked this character. But once I had the option to come back, I was like, this is so cool. I can do something with this.
Yeah. All right. This last one comes from Mostly Joe via email. Do you prefer level versus more point-based or experience-based character advancement?
So what he's saying, like in D&D, when you level up, you gain a set of abilities. And then that's the D&D method.
Right.
And then in other games, like say Mutants and Masterminds, which we talked about a few episodes ago, it's like you have this many points. You can put those points into this. You can put them into this. You can put them into this and so on. So all of your stuff, you have to give your character as opposed to the levels where every time you level up, you get all of these things.
Sure.
I personally very much prefer the D&D method where you get a level. You get all of the benefits that level gives you. Because if it's all up to me, I kind of covered this when we were talking about Mutants and Masterminds, but if all of the options are up to me, if every single parameter of my character is up to me to build up, I am not going to put points in something that doesn't interest me. Even if it has an ability much later on that I'm going to be glad I had, it's going to be so hard to motivate me to put points in something that I'm not getting an immediate reward from.
Right. Because you're gonna prevent yourself as much as you can from getting basically dead levels.
Right.
Which, I mean, like in at least older versions of D&D, we were talking about this earlier, where it's like in 3rd edition, there's a lot more dead levels than in later editions.
And then in 3.5, they like specifically tried to fix that.
Yeah. So I mean, like, and like in that part, like I don't like the level system, but you're right. Like when you're giving too much control over what your character gets and doesn't get, like you can either end up cheesing it out too much. Like if you're given too many options and things like that, you can sometimes min-max your character to a point where it's just like, all right, that's just ridiculous. Like, you know, like you just get too powerful, or you end up screwing yourself over because then you're just going for all these cool little things when like it's like having a bunch of small low level abilities instead of one, you know, high level ability, and that can be your downfall sometimes.
Like, I can't remember if I mentioned this last time when we did talk about Mutants and Masterminds, but like in the game Dark Souls, it is very granular. You put a point into this stat, and then you put a point into this stat. And when you're first learning the game, I think that's a big obstacle, because you don't know what's going to be good. So you will only put things in like, well, my sword does damage off of this stat, so that's the only thing I'm going to be putting points in.
Right.
Even if that's not very good. Mm-hmm. And so then you get to a point where it's like, okay, well, I really want to maybe switch to using magic, but oh wait, I would have to put like 10 points into my magic before I can use any of the spells that I want.
Sure.
So that means I have to spend 10 more levels getting essentially nothing. And that's really tough for a player. So that kind of thing, it's like I said, it's going to be hard to get me into the mindset to do that. Whereas I would much rather either have a system that just gives me all of the stuff without any input from me, or if I am in a point-based system, then I'm just going to be like, okay, well, I'll give myself this low-level ability, and then this low-level ability, and then this low-level ability, because it's giving me something, and it's not just giving me like a +1. It's like, oh, now I can, I don't know, shoot a fireball or something.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that there is anything inherently wrong with points-based system, just that those kinds of systems are not what I am going to gravitate towards.
Sure. I will say about level-based system, at least with like D&D and everything, like there is some fun I get out of trying to work with, like, there's limitations because like one class can only do so many things.
Yeah.
And like, there could be like variants and things like that. But thinking more specifically on like 3rd edition or 3.5, like trying to find the right combination of classes and prestige classes and feats and races and stuff like that to try to get exactly what you want to do is tricky, because it's just like there's only so much you can work around it. And like, especially with the prestige classes, there were like the prerequisites, and some of them were a little bit more involved than others. They're more role played, prerequisites. Like you had to join a cult or something to do it.
I love those kinds of requirements.
I mean, like those are neat, but then at the same time, it's like they don't always fit in with like the storyline of the campaign. But I mean, like if the player really wants to do it, it's like, well, you can find a way to work around it maybe, but I don't know. There's something fun dealing with limitations and trying to get around them to get the thing you want.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to make a character that basically turned into an Illithid. And I just remember making this character and completely forgetting that Illithids were not humanoids. I don't know how I managed to forget that. It was a changeling or something like that. And there's like a series of feats in some classes that you can turn into pretty much any type of humanoid. Like you get their supernatural abilities and stuff like that. I forget which class in traits and stuff it is. But
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, that could just, just turn into like humanoid, obviously, an Illithid because it's humanoid shaped.
Right. It is humanoid, but is not a humanoid.
Right. Its type is
abomination or aberration.
Yeah. Its type is aberration, which is in most cases like really hard to duplicate.
Yeah.
Like that's what they are by nature. They're just weird alien creatures from another plane or something. Just something that's beyond normal
If
existence.
I'm not mistaken, in most versions of D&D, Illithids are actually from the future.
Huh.
And because I remember a long time ago, I bought was it Lords of Shadow?
No,
Lords of Madness?
Yeah, I think so.
It was the Aberrations book.
Yeah.
And
one of my favorite books, actually.
It's a really good book. And I remember reading about aboleths. I thought aboleths are really cool. But the thing about aboleths is that they live essentially forever, and they have memory of like all of the aboleths that came before them.
Right, yeah.
So like they can remember back to the beginning of time, and Illithids are the only creature they do not
remember.
They do not know the origin of.
They're just like, where do these guys come from?
Because unless I'm totally misremembering this, they came from the future.
That sounds familiar. I mean, that sounds about right. Because they're crazy squid people. Illithids are my favorite, honestly.
They're pretty awesome.
They're just so much fun.
I love them in Demon Souls. Did you ever see them in Demon Souls?
Yeah, you showed me that.
Yes.
Yeah. Are they just called mind flayers or something like that?
I don't think the game actually gives them a name, but like among players, yeah, they're mind flayers. Anyway, I think that'll just about do it for today.
Okay.
If you would like to submit items or questions, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, a running list of questions asked, important links, or to download the episode, go to interpartyconflict.blogspot.com, and there's a link on there to our SoundCloud page where you can find us as well. Find us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, or on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/interpartyconflict, or on Twitter at InPartyConflict. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play Music.
Ooh.
So please rate, review, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Nice. Yeah, a guy on a Slack channel that I'm a part of, he was like, hey, you guys on Google Play Music? And I was like, I don't know. And then within like 20 minutes, we were.
Oh,
so
nice.
so I put us on there. And for anybody interested, the intro and outro music is Inspiration by Boxcat Games from Nameless, the Hackers RPG. So thank you for joining us. I have been Gabe.
And I'm Jeff.
And go out and buy a Dreamcast. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye.